we're going to begin with Armenia. Now, on Friday, they marked the solemn 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Armenian Genocide, when as many as 1.5 million people died. You probably heard about this story already because it's been all over the news for an unexpected reason.
The Kardashians are reportedly in the country to tape their reality show and pay tribute to victims of Armenian genocide.
Kim and Kanye did spend time commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide.
What is important in Armenia this month? What's the significance?
I mean, I know it's the genocide thing that's happening, but...
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because of the Kardashians.
Exactly.
Oh, God. Look. To be fair, the only reason I know about chemical warfare in Syria is because of Vanderpump Rules. And that's only because I happened to Google, is there anything worse than Vanderpump Rules? And it was the only thing that came up. The Armenian Genocide is a controversial subject, especially in Turkey, where the government firmly believes the actions of Ottoman Turks do not merit the term genocide. However, not only do historians and at least 25 countries believe it to be a genocide, but so does an unlikely coalition.
Turkey has condemned the Russian President Vladimir Putin for calling the Armenian massacre genocide.
The Pope called it a genocide. George Clooney called it a genocide.
Wow. Putin, the Pope, and Clooney. OK. For a start, kill, marry, fuck, respectively. That's the easiest round of that game I've ever played. That was very easy. Secondly, if all those people say it is a genocide, who says it isn't?
The White House has called it a mass atrocity, but President Obama has stopped short of using the word genocide.
OK, and if you're wondering why he stopped slightly short, it's because Turkey is an absolutely vital ally. So to avoid upsetting them, the president had to consult his diplomatic thesaurus. Genocide, can't say that. Snafu, that's too glib. Big murder party, that's warmer. Armenia's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Let's just go with that and hope they don't notice. Still, President Obama being afraid of the G word is a little surprising, especially because Senator Obama was pretty comfortable with it.
For those of you who aren't aware, there was a genocide that did take place against the Armenian people. It is one of these situations where we have seen a constant denial on the part of the Turkish government and others that this occurred.
And apparently one of those other deniers is myself from the future. I know that because he came back and told me. I told him what he was saying made no sense. He just said Benghazi and left. I don't know what any of it meant. The president has even tried to come up with a semantic workaround. On Thursday, he put out a statement reading, "I have consistently stated my own view of what occurred in 1915, and my view has not changed." And he's released the same statement, almost word for word, on every anniversary of the Armenian genotrocity. It's like every year he's playing a game where the secret word is always genocide. It's like the most depressing episode of Pee-wee's Playhouse ever. But let's move on to New Zealand, the country whose major form of transportation is bungee jumping. Their Prime Minister, John Key, has had a spectacular week.
Peter, a very unusual story breaking here this morning. It involves the Prime Minister, a ponytail and some Pinot Noir.
That is the single greatest news tease I've ever heard. Just take a moment right now at home and imagine a story in which those three things come together. And I guarantee you what you've just come up with is a lot less weird than what actually happened.
John Key has apologised to an Auckland waitress who says he behaved like a bully by repeatedly pulling her ponytail when he came to the place where she worked.
To give you a sense of the detail of what she describes, she says he'd come up behind me when I was ordering at the terminal, tug on my hair and then pretend that his wife Brona had done it. She says that he rounded the corner behind me and commented one time, "That's a very tantalising ponytail."
Oh. If you are a full-grown adult male, there's a very short list of things that you can describe as tantalising without creeping out everyone. There is steak, and that is absolutely it. That's it. That's the only thing. And the crazy thing here is, it turns out this had been going on for a while.
The woman, who's not been identified, says it began in November. She told him to stop in March, but he continued to do it.
She tried to avoid him, even telling his security she was sick of having my hair pulled and one day I'll snap and I'll punch him in the face.
Why do I get the feeling that his security guard's reaction was, oh, please do, that would be awesome. We're not allowed to, but we want to. But wait, just wait until you hear his explanation for a grown man pulling a waitress's hair.
There's always lots of horsing around and sort of practical jokes, and you know, look, that's really all there is to it. I realised she had actually taken offence because it was all in the context of a bit of banter that was going on, and so I, you know, obviously immediately apologised for that. I gave her some mind. She thanked me for that. Said, look, that's all fine, no drama.
Look, no drama. You can't just pull someone's hair for months, then make it all good with a bottle of wine. You're the Prime Minister of New Zealand, not a Real Housewife of New Jersey. But amazingly, this story gets one step weirder, because then people went back and found other clips of him randomly touching strangers' hair, including this one of him pulling a child's ponytail.
Yeah, OK, well, that's good. That's very sweet.
Do you know who this man is?
Yeah.
Who is he?
A ponytail-pulling Prime Minister, right there.
What are you doing? John Key can't pass any dangling hair without pawing at it. He's more catch than Prime Minister at this point. And the problem is, this completely undermines his authority during any diplomatic negotiations. We'd very much like you to end the sanctions. Yeah, we're not going to do that, and I'll tell you why. You're a creepy individual who pulls women's hair. Oh, yeah, that's a fair point, makes sense. I'll show myself out, bit of binter, no drama. And finally this week, a quick update on Dr. Oz. You may recall that last year we covered his propensity for recommending dubious supplements.
Over the past 5 seasons of his syndicated show, Dr. Mehmet Oz has touted a series of exotic diet aids.
I want you to write it down. Garcinia cambogia. Raspberry ketone. It's called Yacon syrup. Sea buckthorn.
Blueberry elbows. Acorn semen. Pricklebush tickle tush. Write it down. Write all those things down. Dr. Oz has had a rough year, from being grilled by a Senate committee to having a major medical journal claim that evidence supported less than half of the recommendations on his show, to having one of his guests, celebrity nutritionist Lindsay Duncan, pay $9 million to settle a lawsuit with the FTC for misleading claims, which was hardly surprising, because the only job title more meaningless than celebrity nutritionist is sloth wrangler, because they're very, very slow. You don't need professional experience to wrangle that. That's basically an inanimate object. That's not a job. You're picking up a stationary thing and putting it somewhere else. But anyway, the point is, just last week, Dr. Oz found himself under attack yet again.
Dr. Oz is being accused of promoting quack treatments by some top physicians who want to get him fired from his job at Columbia University.
Yes, 9 out of 10 doctors agree that that 10th doctor has got to go. Well, on Thursday, Dr. Oz responded.
You've seen the headlines. You've heard the controversy. Now, Dr. Oz fires back. Coming up next. Dr. Oz breaks his silence.
Holy shit! They make it sound like he's about to enter the Thunderdome. 2 doctors enter, 1 doctor leaves because he was paged. Dr. Oz spent much of the episode attacking the doctors who'd called for his resignation, arguing that industry ties were behind their criticism, which might be true, may well be true, but none of that answers the substance of the accusations that he is a quack who serves viewers horseshit dressed up as medicine. And his response to that has been pathetic.
It's called the Dr. Oz Show. We very purposely, on the logo, have Oz as the middle, and the doctor is actually up in the little bar for a reason. I want folks to realize that I'm a doctor, and I'm coming into their lives to be supportive of them. But it's not a medical show.
What's he talking about? It's not a medical show because the word doctor is small. If the size of a word in a logo designated its truth value, then this would be the logo for Pizza Hut. Because just because some bread, tomatoes and cheese got blackout drunk and fucked each other in an abandoned dumpster doesn't mean you get to call the resulting abomination pizza. But out of all Dr. Oz's flimsy pushbacks, this was perhaps the weakest.
No matter our disagreements, freedom of speech is the most fundamental right we have as Americans. And these 10 doctors are trying to silence that right.
No. You are scientifically wrong about that, as you are about so many things. Let's be clear, the First Amendment protects Americans from government censorship, and that's it. It does not guarantee you the right to simultaneously hold a faculty position at a prestigious private university and make misleading claims on a TV show. It absolutely protects your right to say whatever you like on it, just as it protects my right to say what I think about you on mine, which is this. You are the worst person in Scrubs who has ever been on television, and I'm including Katherine Heigl in that. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to be worse than Katherine Heigl? You are also the admittedly handsome ringmaster of a middling mid-afternoon televised snake oil dispensary. And it says something that even when you do a show with 7 fake models of human feces, the biggest piece of shit on the stage has his name in the title. Isn't freedom of speech great? And now, this.
And now, political figures interviewing themselves.
Is there money coming into the political process from wealthy liberals? The answer is yes.
Is this ideal? And the answer is no.
Do I want to support the president? Yes, I do. Do I think the climate is changing? Yeah, I think so.
Is there a clear, comprehensive plan? Yes.
Do I think it's being thought of? I hope so.
Do I think it should have been done? Yes. Do I think it will work? I believe it'll work.
Could we have done better Friday? Yes. And will we? Yes, we will.
Do I think that I responded appropriately?
Do I think they're going to do that?
Do I think we can do more?
Does it make us safer?
What would I do?
What would I do?
What have I learned?
What have I learned?
What could I do better? What could I have done better?
What do I think of Congress? I don't know.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns fashion. Personality you can buy. It's what makes some people look fun and fabulous and what makes most men in their 20s wear variations of a plaid button-up shirt every single day. Listen, I've decided I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to wear versions of this until I'm dead. That's it. We buy a lot of clothes in this country. In 2013, Americans purchased, on average, 64 items per person. And we're able to do that because clothing is incredibly cheap these days, as you'd know if you've ever turned on your TV in the morning.
The price of this dress shocked a lot of people in our office. $39.99.
Blows me away.
Isn't it great?
Kohl's LC by Lauren Conrad, $35.
That's amazing.
This is a dress by Norma Kamali. It is $24 at Walmart.
Get out.
Get out. Seriously, get out. Security, get her out of here. There is no way that dress is $24. Go fuck yourself. You're a liar. You lied to me. And look. For the consumer, low prices are fantastic, and nowadays those clothes will even look good because trendy clothing is cheaper than ever and cheap clothing is trendier than ever. And this is largely thanks to the rise of so-called fast fashion retailers that produce stylish, incredibly low-cost clothing like H&M, Zara and Forever 21, the brand that enables Midwestern tweens to dress like 40-something alcoholics attending the funeral of a Tel Aviv nightclub owner. And it's a powerful look. And a big part of all these brands' appeal is that there's always something new to buy. Just look at H&M's rate of turnover.
Stores are replenished daily. From the streets to the runway, the latest trends are scoured and can go from a sketch to the rack in as little as 3 weeks.
We have new garments coming into the stores almost every day. So if you go to an H&M store today and come back 2 days later, you will always find something new.
Yes, one day maybe you'll find a shirt and it shares rise and swag. Maybe next day you find shirt with pardon my swag. And maybe next day after that you find cocaine-dusted copy of Nylon magazine in a fitting room. Something new at H&M, always. Always. H&M's prices are so competitive that a few years back they put out a dress that cost just $4.95. Think about that. That means you could take a $5 bill, Scotch tape it over your genitals, and you'd be wearing a more expensive piece of clothing. I went online, and a jar of cricket food costs $5. A bunch of weird orange cubes you feed to a bug are worth 5 cents more than this dress. That dress is only 7 cents more than a DVD of the Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. Inexpensive DVD, raves variety. And yet, somehow, fast fashion companies are massively profitable. The chairman of H&M is the 28th richest person in the world. And the co-founder of Zara is the 4th richest person in the world. That means people who own oil fields are worth less than the guy who makes distressed jean shorts. Buying clothes is cheaper and easier than ever, and not just at fast fashion companies. Traditional retailers have lowered their prices as well, which means the only way brands make money is through volume. And that's why even basics like jeans now go through fashion cycles with the lifespan of mayflies.
Obviously, the big trend is skinny jeans.
So for spring, forget about the skinny jean. Now it's all about the flared jean.
Boyfriend jeans are the big thing for spring.
Jonah is wearing the it jean of the season, and that is the baggy jean.
She's marrying these two trends that have been so controversial, the culotte and the denim. We got a denim culotte.
Denim culottes. Finally, an answer to the question, what if an 18th century cabin boy was also Canadian? But as great as all these stylish, cheap clothes are, at a certain point, it's hard not to look at those prices and wonder, how does any clothing company make money? Although, let's be honest, you know the answer to that.
Half of our clothing used to be made in the United States as recently as 1990.
And it's remarkable, and today, 2%.
2%.
2% of the clothes we wear are made here.
That's right. We produce clothes almost entirely overseas, where it's much cheaper. And if 98% of your products could be made abroad, you should really start changing your name to reflect that fact. So American Eagle should really become Bangladeshi Swamp Hen. And Banana Republic should really become... Actually, that one is fine. They got ahead of themselves there, for once. And look, I know you think you've heard this story before, because you have. If you remember, in the 1990s, sweatshops were a key point of outrage. Companies like Gap and Nike were protested. And then, of course, most famously, there was this.
Kathy Lee Gifford said she was shocked to learn that a clothing line bearing her name was manufactured, at least in part, in sweatshops and by underage workers.
Yes, Kathy Lee's clothing line was caught using child labour, which was surprising, given how kindly she'd always treated the small elderly boy who co-hosted her show. And the outcry over sweatshops wasn't just loud, it got some results. Kathy Lee even testified in front of Congress.
We are now morally compelled to ask, each of us, what can we do to protect labor rights in factories around the world and right here in America?
And given that it was my own neglect that compelled us to ask this important moral question, I say to you all, you are welcome. Now let's start day drinking. Come on, what's wrong with you people? It's after 9 a.m. Cheers, cheers. Good morning. But amazingly, and I know this is hard to hear, Kathy Lee did not solve everything. In fact, there has been a pattern of troubling behaviour in the garment industry for the past 20 years. Just look at Gap, the nation's #1 supplier of polo shirts for frat guys to vomit on. Back in the 90s, they were criticised for labour abuses at a factory making their clothes in El Salvador. In response, they agreed to start an independent monitoring programme, which sounded pretty good to everyone. Besides, they had that fun ad where idiots in ill-fitting khakis swing danced, so we kind of forgot all about it. Until 5 years later, when the BBC visited a factory making Gap clothing in Cambodia.
We've been told there were some children here making clothes for the Gap. This is Sun Tida. She's 12 years old. She told the factory she's 18. This is Chan Sita. She's 14. She too lied to get the job. Monitors never questioned either of them.
Oh, come on, that is no excuse. If a child gained entry to a bar using a Pinkberry punch card as a fake ID, it's the fucking bar's fault. Oh, it says here your middle name is one free topping. Cool middle name, have fun in there. In response, Gap revoked approval of that factory and enhanced their age verification requirements, which sounded pretty good. Besides, it was the year 2000 and they had that ad campaign where pastel morons did the mambo, so we kind of forgot all about it again. Until 7 years after that, when a British newspaper visited a workshop in India.
According to a published report, these children aged 10 to 13 were working as virtual slaves, stitching embroidered shirts for Gap kids.
OK, stop. Having children make clothes for Gap is bad enough. Having them make clothes for Gap kids is somehow worse. Hey, make a beautiful shirt that's exactly your size, we'll ship it around the world, it'll be worn once and thrown away. Now make 1,000 more for me. In response, Gap said it didn't know its clothes were in that workshop and demanded its supplier make significant improvements to its oversight of subcontractors. And everyone felt better, especially because it was 2007. And Gap had just had that mind-blowingly cool Holiday in Your Hood campaign with Common.
Fell into the gap, they rockin' the hood. Seen peace in the streets when I stopped in the hood. We gon' keep it alive like hip-hop in the hood.
Look, I know we're talking about child labour, but that may be the saddest that I've felt so far. Then, in 2010, a fire broke out at a factory in Bangladesh that produced Gap clothing, killing 29 workers. After that, Gap launched a building and fire safety plan, which was great, because it meant nothing alarming concerning Gap's presence in Bangladesh was ever going to happen again. Until 2013, when Al Jazeera found this.
There's no fire extinguisher, no fire exit. It's just a shack in someone's backyard. How old are you? How long have you been working here? It says Old Navy. Old Navy is owned by Gap Inc.
Yeah, I guess at this point it seems sweatshops aren't one of those 90s problems we got rid of, like Donnie Wahlberg. They're more like one of those 90s problems we're still very much dealing with, like Mark Wahlberg. Now, Gap says those Old Navy jeans were rejected products sold without their knowledge and never ended up in their stores. And look, all brands in the industry have problems. Gap is by no means the worst. And if you ask Gap, as we did, they'll point out they've made real improvements and tried as hard as they can to fix all this. But think about that. That means a company trying as hard as it can has been not infrequently connected to labour violations in multiple countries over 2 decades. And when you weigh all this up, it seems the only situation in which Gap could claim to be unambiguously helpful to people is when someone shits their pants directly outside one of their stores. Oh, I never thought I'd say this, but thank God Gap is here to help. You people are angels. And one of the biggest problems with holding many brands accountable is that deniability seems to have been stitched into the supply chain. Look at Walmart. They insist they hold their suppliers to high safety standards. But CBS visited a factory in Bangladesh making clothes for Walmart and found otherwise.
The boss at Mondi Apparels, Masadul Haq Chowdhury, showed us an evacuation map marking the location of 13 fire extinguishers. But nearly all of them were missing.
Well, if they're not there, then that's not a map. It's an aspirational poster for fire safety. But if that factory does not conform to Walmart safety standards, how were their clothes there?
The managers told us the factory hasn't been approved by Walmart for production, but they still had an order for 1 million Walmart boxer shorts subcontracted to them by another factory.
I see. So Walmart sent it to an approved factory, and that factory sent it to an unapproved factory without Walmart's knowledge. It's just a crazy, 1 in a million, random accident that's only happened multiple times over the past few years.
Walmart say their clothing suppliers in Bangladesh were doing business with the factory without their knowledge.
One of its suppliers subcontracted part of the order to Tazreen without their permission.
The order was placed with a troubled factory without its knowledge.
It had no idea production ever happened there. And this is not the first time Walmart has been caught unaware.
No, it's not. And they are losing the right to act surprised. They're like the characters in the Hangover movies. It's not an accident the third time, boys. It's a pattern of reckless behaviour which has to be addressed. One of you is going to wind up dead, probably the one who's never on the poster. And look, since the 90s, we've sporadically cared about this, including 2 years ago this week after the Rana Plaza building collapse.
5 days after that deadly building collapse in Bangladesh, rescuers continue to pull survivors from the rubble. New pictures overnight show dramatic rescues, some using their bare hands to free those who are still trapped. At least 360 people have been killed, hundreds more still missing.
That building collapse ended up killing more than 1,100 people. Everyone was justifiably horrified, and that report aired on the Today Show, so you know that everyone there heard it. We then found out that brands like Joe Fresh And The Children's Place had been made in Rana Plaza, and we were horrified again. And yet we get so blinded by low prices that just a few months later, The Today Show was doing this.
This adorable sequin bag is from The Children's Place. I found it for under $10. Wow. Love that. So you don't want to spend a ton of money because you're going to spill something on it. I found this one, which is a silk poly blend from Joe Fresh. Touch it. Still feels really
it's
good.
very nice.
19
if we hadn't felt this one.
$19. Get out. Get out. Get the fuck out of the studio and think about what you're doing. Because one of the ladies cooing over that $19 Joe Fresh blouse is Kathy Lee Gifford. And if she can forget the human cost of shockingly cheap clothing, then that is not, in that case, actually that surprising. Her brain is basically pickled in Chardonnay at this point. But it doesn't give you much hope for everyone else. Look, this is going to keep happening as long as we let it. So we need to show clothing brands not just that we care, but why they should. So we have a little surprise for the leaders of some of these companies. I'm talking specifically about the heads of H&M, of Walmart, of Gap, of Joe Fresh, and of The Children's Place. I've bought all of you lunch, which will be turning up to your office tomorrow. Now, full disclosure, I do not know exactly how this food was made. I told someone who may have told someone else to get the most food they could for the cheapest price. And they did that. Now, I do have strict policies in place. I told them not to spit on that food or to rub their balls on that food. And I've trusted them to abide by that. So I want you to look at this suspiciously cheap food that lands on your desk tomorrow, and I want you to fucking eat it. And if you are thinking, well, I can't do that, I don't know where it came from. What if someone rubbed their balls on it? Then I don't know what to tell you other than now do you understand the importance of supply chain management? But why am I telling you about your lunch when I can show you? Introducing the spring collection of your lunch tomorrow. First, please welcome Dave. Dave is wearing an Old Navy shirt and shorts. His total outfit costs just $23.78, and he's carrying the frighteningly cheap sushi platter that will be arriving at your office tomorrow. Thank you, Dave. Let's move on to Walmart. Christian is modelling both a summer maxi dress available for under $15 and a tray of flouters that we got for just $1.75 each, which is so close to being free, it's literally nauseating. Moving on to Joe Fresh. And Austin is pairing a sweatshirt and casual pant that cost under $40. How is it so cheap? It's a mystery, much like the contents of that gigantic pile of cheap dumplings that you will be eating tomorrow. Thank you, Austin. Let's move on to our H&M collection. We paired Hayley's sub-$20 jeans and blouse with shrimp and salmon pastry for $5, which will be genuinely arriving at your Stockholm offices tomorrow. I'm guessing that you will smell it before it gets into the room. And finally, thank you. Finally, please welcome The Children's Place and say hello to Elliot. She's wearing an adorable white summer dress, which costs less than $15. And what's that she's pulling? That would be your lunch, a selection of dirt cheap rotisserie chickens. Just to reiterate, I have no idea where they came from or what might have happened to them along the way. But Elliot sure wants you to eat them. Isn't that right, Elliot? Exactly. So eat them. Eat them. Eat this wagon of mystery chickens. That's our show. Thank you to all our models.